Welcome to the Big Picture Retirement Show, where you'll learn what it really takes to have a successful retirement. With over 20 years of experience, your host, Rick Rivera of Safeguard Investment Advisory Group, has seen it all and is here to help you achieve your retirement dreams. This is the Big Picture Retirement Show.
Hello, once again, you're listening to the Big Picture Retirement Show. I'm your host, Rick Rivera. I want to thank all our listeners for tuning in right now. I just want to say we really appreciate your input on the show. And also, please keep the emails and phone calls coming because we want to make sure that we're talking about topics that are important to you rather than a bunch of things you could care less about. So, for those of you that are new listeners, our show is about giving you tools and strategies in order to enhance what it is that you've already been able to accomplish when it comes to your retirement planning. Maybe some of you are 5 years away from retirement. Maybe you are already retired and you're like, hey, listen, you know what? It's one thing to win a comfortable retirement. It's a whole nother thing in order to keep it. So you want to make sure that everything is running on all cylinders. So rather than us, sit here and try to, have a crystal ball here and pick the next hottest stock tip, what we do is we try to give you tools and strategies that you can immediately implement that's going to enhance what you're doing without any guesswork. What I mean by that is actually giving you tax strategies you can implement tomorrow that's going to enhance your savings or enhance your investments or enhance the quality of your retirement. Use strategies that you can use maybe to reduce the amount of fees that you're paying on your investments. So the more money you save is more money in your pocket, which enhances your return without any crazy guesswork of trying to pick the next hottest stock tip. Or maybe ways in which you can pass on your assets to your heirs due to a special needs situation much more efficiently, much more tax efficiently. Or how to maximize every dollar out of your Social Security. How to maximize every dollar out of your pension. Some of you listening to the show right now may work for Kaiser and you have pensions through Kaisers and you're like, Rick, is it best for me to take the lump sum or is it best for me to take the monthly payment? Should I be putting money into Roths or 401k? You have all these questions and you may be doing good, but we want to make sure that, we can give you tools, again, that are just going to enhance what you're already doing. Because, if we can save you 10 or 15% in taxes, how easy is it to make that same 10 or 15% in the market? What good is making 10 or 15% on your investments if you don't have your trust and will planning in place and now you're giving half of, that return to the government? Or maybe your long-term care planning isn't in order and now, you're getting a great rate of return. You're chasing return in the market and getting a good rate of return, but now that whole return and more is going to long-term care. So it didn't do you any good because there's other aspects of your planning that have not been addressed. So when I talk about the whole picture, big picture approach, this is what I'm talking about. I'm not just talking about, chasing return in the market, which, return, of course, is important, but there's a lot of other things that come into play. So if you have questions about any of the topics that I discuss on the show, or maybe there's some topics that I just haven't had a chance to address that you have a question regarding your own particular situation, feel free to give us a call, 800-700-1980. And I'd be happy to answer any of your questions directly. Again, just call us 800-700-1980. You can also reach us on the web at safeguardinvestment.com. Again, that web address is safeguardinvestment.com. So let's jump right into it and let's talk about what is the difference between, a trust, a will, am I better off setting up a trust? Am I better off setting up a will? I want to discuss those topics today and also a little bit about estate planning, power of attorneys, and those estate planning documents. Because again, you could have the best investments in the world. What good is it if, God forbid, something happens to you and now it's all locked up in probate? Or you got the best investment in the world and God forbid you're sick, you're ill, you're in the hospital, and now your spouse or your loved ones need to handle financial affairs for you and they need $5,000 out of your IRA or 401k or 457 or TSP, 403b. Guess what? You don't own those accounts jointly with your spouse. So now if an issue occurs and they need to dig into those assets to cover medical costs or things of that nature, you don't own it jointly with your spouse, they don't have access to that account. So they call up the broker and say, hey, listen, I need $5,000 out of my husband's IRA or my wife's IRA or 403B. They're going to say, sure, can you put your spouse on the line? You're going to say, well, that's the reason why I need the money is because my spouse is in the hospital and I need to cover some costs and medical expenses, or my mom and dad are in the hospital and I need to cover some medical costs. They're going to say, well, I'm sorry, you don't own that jointly with your spouse or your parents. Do you have a power of attorney? Well, the next most common response back to the broker or the financial institution is, well, I'm primary beneficiary on this thing. Why can't I access it? Well, because your spouse didn't die. They're still alive. Or mom and dad are still alive. The beneficiary designation doesn't work until they pass on. So while they're alive, you need a power of attorney to access those documents. So again, there's a lot of intricacies here that, again, if all we're doing is chasing return in the market, there's a lot of areas we could be missing. That, you have the best investment in the world, and now we can't even pay bills because nobody can access those accounts in order to handle those things. And now we have big problems. So I want to talk about some of these things today. And again, on the theme of holistic planning, big picture approach. Again, however, if you do have questions outside of what I'm talking about today, maybe you're like, Rick, you know what? I really want to learn when is the best time for me to take Social Security. Or maybe you're already getting Social Security and you're like, Rick, you know what? If there's any way I can maximize my Social Security or minimize the taxation on my Social Security, I'd like to know those strategies. Or maybe you're getting a pension and you're like, Rick, is there a way to maximize this pension or minimize the taxes on my pension or my investments? Is now a good time for me to do Roth conversions? What's the best way to minimize the taxation on my required minimum distributions at 72? If you have questions about any of these things outside of what I'm talking about today, or maybe you got questions about the specific things I am talking about today, feel free to give us a call, toll free, 800-700-1980. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have on that topic. And stay tuned because I'm also going to give away something during the show that you all are entitled to. Just stay tuned and I'm going to give it to you or offer it to you after the break. But before we get into that, I just want to kind of start off on some basics. Just a while ago, again, to get on today's theme, in terms of thinking of the big picture, one of the topics I talked about not too long ago is I talked about long-term care, looking at long-term care planning. Because, health insurance, like we said, only covers you for maybe, if you're lucky, 90 days. If, God forbid, you have to go to a nursing home. And then after that, the bill is on you. And for many retirees nowadays, hey, listen, we're not getting any younger. People are living longer. And just because we're living longer doesn't necessarily mean that, we're living in the best quality of life, as far as, some people may get dementia. Some people may have chronic ailments that they do need some sort of skilled nursing or some sort of care to come in and help them, whether at home or assisted living or even a nursing home. And that costs a lot of money. So on one of the shows, I was talking about, hey, there's things that you can do outside of purchasing traditional long-term care insurance. And what I mean by that is what we were saying in one of the previous shows is that, traditional long-term care insurance can be very expensive. And let's face it, if you never use it and you cancel it, you don't get your money back. If you pass away, all the money you put into it, if you never use it again, it doesn't go to the beneficiaries. There's a chance that over time premiums can raise on you, and that eats into the budget. So there's advantages and disadvantages to traditional long-term care insurance, no question about it. So the point that I was making in a previous show is that there's a variety of other options and strategies you can use in order to protect yourself from this type of spend down. And in some cases, we can use multiple strategies together. Everybody's situation is different. So again, that's part of looking at the big picture approach. So I'm not going to cover that today because I want to get into the trust and will planning, but I'm just reminding everybody because I've been getting a lot of questions about it ever since that show. So if you're interested in, different strategies outside of purchasing traditional long-term care insurance to cover you from that, give me a call, toll free, 800-700-1980. Everybody's circumstance is different. We'll basically talk. We can even, set up a phone conference, talk to you over the phone, and lay out a variety of different options, and you can just see what makes sense for you and what doesn't. But again, I just want to let you know, point is, there are other options out there outside of purchasing traditional long-term care insurance if that's an itch that you want to scratch. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to talk about estate planning. I'm going to talk about the difference between trusts and wills. I'm going to talk about power of attorneys, and then I also have one giveaway that I'm going to do as well. With that being said, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to the Big Picture Retirement Show with Rick Rivera. For more information about Rick and the Safeguard Investment Advisory Group team, go to safeguardinvestment.com. While you're there, you can also download educational retirement guides and sign up for an upcoming seminar. That's safeguardinvestment.com. Now, back to the podcast.
And we're back. You're now listening again to the Big Picture Retirement Show. I'm your host, Rick Rivera. If you have any questions about any of the topics that we're discussing on the show today, please feel free to give me a call, 800-700-1980. Again, our toll-free number is 800-700-1980. You can also reach us on the web at safeguardinvestment.com. And if you go to our website, we also have some webinars that we have been conducting where you can watch from the comfort of your home right on your laptop. If you care to sign up for those webinars, just go to our website or give us a call and you can sign up and we'll send you a link so you can attend those. They're usually in the evening time, right around 6 o'clock. And there's a lot of good information on those webinars. And it lasts like half hour, 45 minutes. So it's not going to take up your whole evening, and a lot of good information on it. So with that being said, I just want to let you know we're going to talk about trusts and wills, power of attorneys, and then I'm going to talk about what I'm going to offer you to help your estate planning. So the big question that I've been getting a lot is, Rick, the difference between trusts and wills, is one better than the other? I'm going to give you some general rules of thumb here. Keep in mind, you always want to consult an attorney or an advisor before implementing any of these strategies that we talk about on the show, because everybody's situation is different. But in general, when it comes to trusts and wills, the big difference between the two is a trust is a legal entity, so it owns your assets. A will, you're just stating what your wishes are when you pass away. So a will, when you drop a will, you're basically saying, hey, listen, you know what? Something happens to me. I want my beneficiaries to receive everything equally, or however you want the assets to be divided. So let's say you got 2 children, you want them to receive things 50-50. In your will, you're going to say, okay, I want all my assets to be divided amongst my 2 children equally. Okay, now I'm simplifying this, obviously. So when you pass on, what happens is, of course, depending upon the size of your estate, the kids just don't get everything automatically. They can't just switch everything over into their names and walk away with all the assets. What's going to happen is when they go to do this, the state will freeze the assets, and they want to make sure that all your debts are paid. They then want to establish clear title to your property. And once that is all done and all your debts and everything are paid and there's clear title to your property, then they're going to say, okay, according to your will, whatever's left over will now go to your children 50-50. But keep in mind, the state doesn't do this for free. It costs money and it takes time. Let's face it, especially if you live in California, the state of California is not known for their speed in handling things. So time, money, energy, potential headaches, and it can be very costly. So for those of you that are like, hey, listen, you know what? I want to make sure that whatever I got is going to go to the kids, and I don't want them to have the hassle of probate. I don't want, unnecessary money going to the state. I want to make things nice and simple and easy. Well, what people will do is they'll set up a living trust. And the reason why the trust avoids probate is because it's an entity. It's a living person in a sense. And this trust owns the assets, almost like a corporation is probably the best way I can explain it. And you are the owner of the trust. Or if it was a corporation, you would be, let's say, the president of the corporation. In this case, your trust, you're the trustee, the trustor and trustee, the owner and controller of the trust. And then you appoint a child or whoever it is that you want to be your backup, a successor trustee. So if this was a corporation, you'd have the president, and then you have the vice president. The president can't, serve the duties, and you have a vice president, somebody else's backup to pick up where the president left off. So it's kind of like that with the trust. So what happens is the trust actually owns your home. So for example, with me, let's say I own a trust, and it would say, the Ricky Rivera Family Trust. That trust, the Ricky Rivera Family Trust, or the Mary and John Smith Family Trust, owns their home, owns their bank accounts. The titling of those assets are under the Mary and John Smith Family Trust. Titling assets would be Ricky Rivera Family Trust. And what happens is, in that trust, since the trust owns the asset and it's a legal entity, just like a corporation, when that person passes away, the entity is still living. So now the vice president, like a corporation, or in this case, a trust, the successor trustee, whoever is named, now can step up. It could be one of the children, and they now automatically take control. And now it's their job to now distribute the assets according to the trust. So instead of the state of California, or whatever state you're living in, stepping in like they would with a will in order to settle the estate, now your own family member or children can just make sure your debts are paid, establish clear title, and then distribute the assets according to the way the trust is written without any interference from the state. And thereby, no probate fees. Things can be done, settled much more efficiently. So the trust is really a document or an entity used to avoid the probate process. In some cases, some people will say to me, well, Rick, is it better for me to have a trust or is it better for me to have a will? The answer to that question is going to, there's a variety of different circumstances. Now, if you don't own, a home, and maybe you don't have a lot of money in investments and things of that nature, there's certain ways you can title your accounts where they will avoid probate, and you don't have to worry about, setting up a trust and things like that. So by sitting down with an advisor, or if you want, just give us a call and we can, ask you some questions, figure out what your situation is, and then we can kind of guide you and let you know which way is the best way for you to go. But for the most part, if you own real estate and you want that asset to avoid probate, and you have, a decent amount of assets, you may want to set up a trust in order to avoid the probate process. Now, if you have specific questions about this and you want to know some of the more intricacies about this, give me a call right now, toll free 800-700-1980, and we can set up a phone consultation, and I can give you more details and let you know what might work best in your situation. Some of you may have scenarios where, you have a child where, one of the children are great with money. The other one may not be so great with money. And maybe you want to do a spendthrift provision. Maybe you have other circumstances going on within the family. And you can kind of share some of those scenarios that you have going, family dynamics with us that you have going on. And then we can give you some ideas on what you can do and how to design your trust to work around some of those dynamics that you have. Maybe there's a special needs situation and you want to make sure that the inheritance doesn't interfere with that child's benefits that they're getting. So there's a million different situations. Bottom line, give us a call directly, 800-700-1980. I'll go over those specifics with you. Now, I want to jump into talking about power of attorneys. Now, the trust, keep in mind, protects the estate from probate when you pass away. That really does nothing for you while you're alive, so to speak. What does protect you while you're alive is going to be the power of attorney for asset management, power of attorney for healthcare. And what I mean by that is I'm taking you back to an example I gave you earlier where, for example, your TSP, your 401ks, your 403bs, you don't own that jointly with your spouse. So if God forbid something happens to you, let's say you're in the hospital and you need your loved one or your spouse to manage your financial affairs, they don't own that account jointly with you. So they don't have access to it. If they need money out of that account or they need to restructure the assets in some way, they call the broker. You need a power of attorney for asset management in order for them to have access to those accounts. Just because they're listed as primary beneficiary does nothing. The beneficiary designation only comes into play when a person passes away. You need a power of attorney for asset management in order for them to do that. Your own spouse, you would need that for. Or maybe you're in the middle of a real estate transaction. You're in the middle of a real estate transaction. God forbid something happens, your car accident, whatever. And now you're about, it's coming time for escrow to close. You're in the hospital. Your spouse needs to sign the final documents, but they can't because they're in the hospital. How are you going to close that deal? You need a power of attorney for asset management. So we talked about power of attorney for assets. Now there's one for healthcare. Again, this is all looking at things from that big picture approach. Now, of course, if you have questions about your specific situation, or maybe you have questions outside of what I'm talking about here today, give me a call toll free 800-700-1980. Or, maybe you have questions on how to maximize your Social Security or your pensions. Give us a call. How to minimize the risk on investments or minimize the fees on your investments. Give us a call toll free 800-700-1980, and we can kind of get into some strategies or some ideas. Now, healthcare power of attorney is going to allow your loved ones to make medical decisions in the event that you can't do it yourself. But what I wanted to share with you is this. There's something called the Quality of Life Directive that dovetails into it. With your healthcare power of attorney, allows your loved ones to make medical decisions for you. But it doesn't tell them what decisions to make. So it's kind of up to them. And sometimes if you have more than one child that, sometimes they don't agree on the decisions. Well, I think we should go this way with mom. I think we should go this way with dad. And they may argue. So there's a document called the Quality of Life Directive that you can use to write down how you want to be medically treated under a variety of different scenarios. It talks about pain control. It talks about do not resuscitate clauses, CPR, spiritual beliefs, religious beliefs, donation of body parts. It has room for you to elaborate in longhand how you want to be treated under a variety of different scenarios. That way, under most any condition, rather than the kids arguing or debating as to what direction to go with mom and dad, they can just look at this Quality of Life Directive and it'll tell them what decisions to make. They'll say, under this condition, mom would want this. Under this condition, dad would want that. There's nothing for us to argue or fight about. So this is what I'm going to offer you on the show today. If you want, we have the Quality of Life Directive on a PDF that you can download for yourself. So if you already have a healthcare power of attorney, I suggest you give us a call on the show right now and ask for our Quality of Life Directive. We'll email it to you. No cost, no obligation. We'll just email it to you. So if you want that Quality of Life Directive, or maybe you just have questions about some of the topics I talked about today, or maybe topics I didn't get a chance to talk about regarding your own retirement planning, give us a call toll free 800-700-1980. I'm your host, Rick Rivera. Don't forget to check us out on the web at safeguardinvestment.com. Look forward to talking to you all next week as well.
Firm offers insurance services. Safeguard Investment Advisory Group, LLC is a registered investment advisory firm. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Safeguard Investment Advisory Group, LLC is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Safeguard Investment Advisory Group, LLC. This radio show is a paid placement.